Ladies and gentlemen, my guest this week is Megan Zechman. She's one of the co-founders of Education Possible, and she's also a mom of two girls. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Well, I'm glad to have you here. I know that we met actually during the Homeschool Studio webinar, and I had a great time doing that. And I just wanted to bring you onto the show because I saw you were doing some remarkable things as well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I am from Central Florida. I live in Central Florida right now with my husband of almost 20 years. And I have two girls. One is 12, about to turn 13, and one is 10. We've lived here for about 8 years. My husband actually works for Disney, so we do a lot at Disney, including a lot of our education. We take a lot of field trips there, and I've incorporated a ton of learning there as well. And we try to be outside as often as we can, but that's kind of me. I homeschool, shuttle my kids around, and work on the site.
Well, that's great, and that's quite interesting. I know that a lot of people spend some time at Disney, and have your husband working there is, I'm sure, a great thing.
hmm
Uh, well, one of the things that we do to start off the show is to have our guests share an inspiring quote or a scripture, and I'd like for you to take it away with whatever you have to share.
Okay. One thing that, as I was thinking about this, that kept coming back to me is something that my co-founder, Susan Williams, and I talk about all the time, and it's actually the tagline for our Disney schooling group that Susan had started that I'm a part of, that's separate from the site, but a bunch of us go and do school at Disney and learn at Disney. And it's "The world is our classroom." And it really sums up what I've tried to do in our homeschool, in that it's not about books. It's about everyday learning and using the world as your classroom, using every opportunity that you possibly can for learning, to teach my girls that it's not just during school that the learning happens. And I figure if I can teach them that, then I've succeeded, because they won't be the type of kids that once they graduate will never read another book, or won't go on field trips with their kids, or won't travel because they want to learn something. And that's just one of the things that I've wanted to teach my kids throughout this whole journey of homeschooling.
Well, I commend you on that, and that's something that I guess we live by as well. I mean, there's so much more than just doing school. It's really about learning, and so great job on that. And while we're talking about learning, we're absolutely here to talk about homeschooling. And so I like to hear everybody's journey and how they actually got to this place of homeschooling. So share with us how you even found out about homeschooling or got involved with that.
It was a number of years ago. When I was growing up, I never planned on getting married. I never planned on having kids, but God is funny that way, and had different plans. And I met my husband before we graduated from college. And we waited a long time to have kids. As I said, we've been married almost 20 years, and my oldest is not even 13 yet. And I I grew up in the public school system, and perfectly well, I graduated from college. I can read and speak and do all kinds of things, and really never thought twice about putting my kids in public school. And then I became a youth minister, and I was around my kids, my youth kids, all the time. And I could see, even in the little bit of time that I had been out of school, how much school had changed. And it's night and day now from then. So, if you can imagine the continuum, you had when I was in school and now, and they were kind of in the middle of that, and already it was so different from what I grew up with. And there was all this pressure. And I I didn't want that for when we finally had kids. That really started to frighten me. And we actually had a couple of homeschool kids in our youth group that my husband really started looking at the family and saying, there's something really different about them. And so we had children, and it still wasn't on my radar. And he started saying, I'm thinking I want you to homeschool. And you're crazy. No. And then Abigail, my oldest, was ready for school. And when I say she was ready for school, she was beyond ready for school. But we had moved to New Jersey, and we had been in Michigan, and she had made the cutoff, and so she would have been going to school. We moved to New Jersey, and she missed the cutoff. She's a fall baby, and she was already ready, and they were going to make her wait a whole nother year. And I said, I can't make her wait a whole nother year. And that was kind of when the decision was made. And I look back now, because it's so much of our life that, one, I can't imagine it any other way. And two, my younger daughter is an introvert. Abigail, my older one, would have done fine in school. She would have survived. She would have thrived. She learns that way. She's very confident in who she is and very outspoken. Well, my younger one is not that way. She learns, she learns much better hands-on, is very introverted, does not like answering. She can't answer you like that, on the spot. She really needs time to think. She likes to observe, and she would have died in the public school system because it's not set up for her. And so I look at it, yeah, we got into it because of Abigail, but thank goodness we did and liked it, and it became a lifestyle because Mariana needed it. And I look back, and we had Abigail evaluated, because in Florida you have a couple ways that you can homeschool. One of them is an evaluation by a public school teacher. So I had her evaluated that first year. Now, mind you, they wanted to hold her back a year, quote unquote, in New Jersey. She would have had to wait a whole year. Well, not only was she ready for school, the teacher actually moved her ahead a year, a grade. So she would have been even further behind had I not listened to what was, being pressed on me and spoken to me, and just waited to put her into public school. So that's kind of how we've done it. They've been homeschooled the whole time. They've never been to school. They don't know any different at this point.
Wow, interesting journey. Well, of course, we know there are a lot of different ways that it can be done. I guess, what are some of your curriculum choices, or how do you go about doing your homeschool?
When we first started, when we were living in New Jersey is actually one of the best states to homeschool in because there's no laws, meaning there's no tests, there's no evaluations or anything. So we were really unschooling at that point. We weren't using a set curriculum. We were just out in the world. We were following their interests. They're both prolific readers, so we were constantly reading, and it worked really well for us. And then when we moved to Florida and they had to be evaluated, it became really tough for me to kind of figure out how to write down and make a portfolio out of unschooling. And so I did have to move toward some curriculum, but I use as little curriculum as possible. I'm still a very eclectic homeschooler. I will have to say I lucked out and chose the correct math program for our family in the very beginning, and we are able to use it the whole way through, because I know some families, that's one of the ones that they struggle with, and they use different ones, and then you worry, did I miss something? Is this program, had they done it a couple years before? Do I have to go back? So we use MathUC, and part of that was because of the hands-on component of MathUC, because they use the manipulatives and they use precision, mastery. You have to know the subject before you enable them to move on, and that was important to me. And then we use character quality language arts, which is it isn't as well known as some of the other ones, but they've taken a lot of the well-known programs. So they take Shirley Grammar or Easy Grammar and Shirley English and Andrew Pudawa's writing program, and they've kind of condensed it into one big program. So like their stuff comes in, it's like this big for the year, because it's grammar, spelling, writing, it's everything. And so I liked that, and so we don't go through every single page, but we do enough of it. And then if I don't like what they have them writing on, I'll have them choose a different topic. And that's really it for set curriculum that most people would use. for us. And like you said, everybody's different and it takes trial and error.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the things that I like to show to people who are new to homeschooling is that a lot of people are eclectic and there are a lot of different flavors of what people are doing. And that seems to be a trend, especially with my guests and people who have been doing it for a while. You
Hmm.
may start off with a more structured approach or with just out of the box solutions, but eventually you just get comfortable in making your own.
Hmm.
Um, Now, I guess in talking about that, one of the things with either unschooling or just having some of these choices and having some of the freedom is you run into challenges. And I know without a doubt, you've probably had some challenges with homeschooling, whether it be the schoolwork itself or outside pressures. Share with us some of the challenges you've had.
I'm very fortunate because, as I said, my husband was actually the one who suggested it to me. So he is more than 100% on board. We really do it as a family. So I know a lot of families where there's one spouse or the other, or a mother-in-law or a mother, grandmother that aren't on board, and that makes it really, really tough for the families. Because it's hard enough. You're really already going against the norm and you're already kind of an oddball. And so to have people that love you not support your decision makes it tough. So I am lucky there. For me, one of the biggest things is feeling like I'm not doing enough because there's so much to learn, especially in today's day where the world is literally at our fingertips. We can find any answer. I mean, I remember being in the library for hours with the card catalog doing research for papers. And now you sit there and can find out anything you want in the blink of an eye. But that also makes you feel like, but there's so much out there to learn, there's so much out there to do, and I can always do more, and they're not going to learn enough, and what if they don't know this? So, and I still go through that after all these years. I still struggle with that. My oldest is now going into seventh because we actually brought her back down because when I found out that she was to be skipped a grade, I was all excited because in the public school, that's a great thing. Your child's smart and you're doing that. And then when we got into this lifestyle and homeschooling, I realized I want that year back. I don't want her to miss a year. I want her to be in our home and to be able to find out who she is and really explore her interests. So we actually pulled her back to her what she would be in public school. So we've been doing it for a long time, and I still have those doubts. I still question, you know, and I don't know why this is, but people in the community find it necessary to grill homeschool kids. So you'll be standing in line somewhere. Oh, your kids are homeschooled. Well, what are you learning today? And well, what's the capital of this? And just ridiculous things that they don't do to public school kids. And like I said, my one, well, just stands there because someone's now asked her something that she knows the answer to, but she doesn't know if she's sure. And the other one's like, what are you doing? So they both look there and people are like, why don't your kids know this? And so I get caught on there, or they're talking with their public school friends, and well, we're learning this, and we maybe haven't started that yet. Well, I've learned that we're all going to get to it eventually, and if my kids really want to learn it, they're going to learn it,
Mhm.
and we're just going to learn it at different times, and that's okay. But it really, some days I really have to remind myself it's going to be okay, because you know what, I love my kids more than the best teacher in the entire world can, and I have two. I don't have 30. I don't have discipline issues. I don't have, I don't have to read announcements. I don't have to live by all these rules that I didn't make up. I don't have to test them. So just by those measures alone, I'm ahead of the game as far as I'm concerned. And for me in Florida, one of the problems I faced in some states, you have a support group. Maybe there's a couple support groups in your area, but they're really big, and you can do co-ops and you can do field trips and you do all these great things and really get connected in this one group. We don't have that here. We have a bunch of little groups that actually are shrinking. The moms aren't going to the support groups like they used to. I think we just don't have the time, or they weren't meeting the needs.
Mhm.
And so that's something I had to learn. I had to create my own world here, my own homeschooling world for my kids. But that also means that every year in a sense, sometimes those groups change because maybe you're doing a co-op with 5 families, and maybe they decide that they want to stick with the same subject or they want to move on to this other science, but I'm not ready to do that science, or that's not my next science. Well, now we kind of have to say goodbye to those friends and find something else that works for us. Not saying we are not friends with them, but maybe you won't see them every week. And so every year you're evaluating, and that can make it a little lonely. So those are a couple of things that I've struggled with, over the past almost 8 years that we've been doing it down here.
Okay, and you touched on it a bit, with people just grilling your kids or doing those different things. How do you handle the issue of socialization? Because people surely ask about it, or have a fear that your kids won't be able to make it in society.
I think that's so funny. I would love to know where that started, this misnomer that these kids sit in their homes and never speak to anybody. And I'm not saying that there aren't kids like that, there aren't families like that, because there are. But that's not the majority of us. The majority of us are never home. We know that we can't do this alone. It's no fun to sit here and do it alone. So you make up these groups, and we do co-ops and we're with people every week. Sometimes it's the same people and sometimes it's different people. Right now we have a group of people that we do the plays with, so we'll go to all the Shakespeare plays and the repertory theater plays. We have another group that we'll do field trips with. We have another group that we do American Girl stuff with. We have another group that we do science and book club with. And then we just have other friends that we meet at various times. I actually have to plan times that we're home, not with other people. And then with technology the way that it is, both of my girls are really into Minecraft right now, and we're on 2 different homeschool servers. So they're with homeschoolers on these servers, and then they'll actually FaceTime their friends from here. So where I used to go and hang out with my friends, they don't have a lot of friends in the neighborhood like I did, because we all went to the same public school. So we were all taken from the same geographical location. Well, their friends are all over and they can't drive, obviously, and I'm not going to drive them all over the place. So they've found this way. And what a great thing that technology's given them, that they talk to their friends all the time. And it's not just on the phone like I was doing, connected to a cord in my home. They are able to see them and FaceTime and Skype with their friends and play games. So, I wish people would stop using that as a reason for whatever they're trying to say about homeschoolers, because it's just, we're too social.
Yeah, that seems to be a common problem. And while we're talking about, I guess, socialization and some of these different things, um, we look for different resources and different things to help our kids out. And I've noticed that you're running a site called Education Possible.
Hmm.
Tell us about the site, how they got started, what you actually offer there for families.
Okay. I love Education Possible. It's, I've done other things business wise in the past. I actually had another blog previously, but nothing that I'm as passionate about as this. And Susan Williams and I created it just, oh my gosh, I think today might be our year anniversary. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, yesterday or today, um, so we're pretty young on the online world, and we've been friends for a long time. And Susan is one that I do book club and I do science with, so we've kind of done life and done school together for a long time. Our kids are about the same ages. She has 2 boys, I have 2 girls, and they're best friends. We're together a lot, and we have a very similar learning style and learning philosophy. And we just realized that a lot of families were asking us, well, how do you do this? Well, how do you learn at Disney? How are you doing geography? Because we would have a geography co-op at Epcot because they have all the countries. Well, how do you do that? Well, what are you using for this? And how are you handling this? We realized there's a lot of need out there. And there's a lot of stuff out there for younger kids. There's a lot of websites, there's a lot of printables, but there's not as much, as you said, when you've been homeschooling for a little while, you now are ready to kind of get out of that box. You're ready to get out of the curriculum box, and you want to try to do some things on your own. And that's what we do. We neither one of us uses Math UC is the most streamlined curriculum that I've used. And so we have all these great resources and other things that we create or that we find from all these little mom and pops that we were like, oh, this would be great to share. So we're not a site for new homeschoolers. We're just not, because we're not going to talk to you about Saxon math or the differences between classical education and Charlotte Mason. That's just not who we are. There's a lot of other blogs out there doing that. We are for the parents that are looking to do things a little bit more on their own. They're looking to get a little bit more eclectic. They're looking for those unique things. And actually our tagline is discover, create, learn. And we help families discover creative ways to learn together. We want them out of the house. We want them learning on field trips. We want them making all of these hands-on projects and doing these hands-on activities with their kids, because we find that our kids learn better that way, and we know that there's other kids out there like that. And so we've also noticed, since in just this year that we've been out there, that there are even fewer sites talking about the older kids. So many families put their kids back into school once they hit middle school and high school, because maybe they've Google searched and they haven't come up with a lot of people talking about it. There aren't as many resources. It doesn't seem as easy. And they don't want to do it alone, so it's scary. It is scary to think about the older grades. But we want parents to keep their kids home. We want to be that resource. So we are really working to be the go-to resource, especially for middle school right now, because I have one in middle school, she has one in middle school, one that's just going into high school, and then I have one that'll be going into middle school next year. So, just kind of that age range is really where we are, 5th to 8th grade kind of thing, and then moving into the high school years. And that's what we talk about. So how can you take these resources and these learning styles and these programs that you've used, let's say lap books or notebooking, how can you take these things that your kids love and that they work well with, that have worked great for your family, how can you transition it from a grade school product to a middle school product, and then maybe a high school product? And that's a lot of what we talk about. It's very current in that I guess you would call me kind of lazy. I'm not the type of blogger that's going to go do all this research to present something that just to present it. What you get on the site, I've just done with my kids. You're going to get the science lesson that I taught in our science co-op last month. So it's what I'm doing. It's what Susan's doing right now. She wrote up a bunch of stuff. She went to DC. I'm about to go to DC. And so you'll get stuff on, if you're going to DC, here's some stuff. Learn about this. We do a lot about Disney. If you're coming here, here's how you learn about it. And so that's kind of what our site is about, a lot of hands-on, active things for families.
It definitely seems like there are a lot of people that I know who could benefit from that, because it, like you mentioned, and I guess that's a good distinction to make. It's not necessarily designed for the newbie homeschooler, but for the person who's going to venture out and wants to do a little bit more. So that seems like a great resource for a lot of people to add to their arsenal for homeschooling, and for them to just explore, and they'll find some ideas. And the good thing is, this is not just you giving some lip service, but it's more of the things that you're doing already.
Yeah.
And if you've done it recently, it's something that would be relevant and current. So that helps out families.
Yeah, that's what we hope. And we've actually started a link up. We started it a few months ago, and we have 7 other blogs that co-host with us. Susan and I realized that there just was not a lot out there for middle schoolers. But we also found that because we are part of the IHN, iHomeschool Network, and we started talking on our group board that there are a few of us that do talk about these older grades, and well, let's work together. And so we decided, well, let's start a link up. And so we did. And it's called Finishing Strong. It's every Wednesday, and it's on all 7 sites, including ours. And we found some really great moms and dads that are talking about this that I had never known were out there. So it's introducing not only us to new people, but then we get to share with all of our readers and then the readers of all the blogs that are co-hosting with us. And so it's another great resource for the families who really want to homeschool through high school and middle school, because it's different. It's not impossible. It is possible, but it's just different.
Okay, and I'll be sure to link up to that in the show notes for this episode because I see the value in the link ups, especially. I've
Yeah.
had the opportunity to participate in a couple of them and just find resources that otherwise you wouldn't have known about.
Yeah.
So let's transition here to our last section of the podcast, and we're going to talk here. And this segment is called Seven with Devin. So I'm gonna give you 7 questions, and you just give me your best answer.
Okay.
Doesn't matter how long or short, but this is somewhat of a lightning round. So
I was going to say, I feel like I'm on a game show. Where's my buzzer?
yeah, and for some of these they're related, so I'll group them together.
Okay.
The first two are, what's your top free resource that you'd recommend to our listeners or viewers, and also what's a paid resource that you'd recommend?
Okay. For people who would be readers of our blog that would come to our site and would really enjoy what they see there, my best resource is Pinterest, 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 because that is where I go to find history and science and life skills and all these things that I want to add a hands-on element. There's so much there. To some of it you can just take and do, and some of it you can take and adapt. But it's all there. It's all free. It's searchable. You can pin it on your own pin board. And we have a very large Pinterest on our Pinterest account. There's tons of boards on all kinds of things because we really focus a lot on history, science, art, life skills. We're really big on, we love our kids, but I want them to move out at some point, and I know in order for them to do that, I have to teach them life skills. So we talk a lot on our site about life skills and technology and travel. So you'll see a lot of that on our Pinterest site. But I'm on Pinterest all the time, especially for learning. So that's my best one for free. For paid, I don't want to pass the buck because that's not why I'm saying this, but it really depends on the child. Because it's not cookie cutter. So what I would spend my money on could be a complete waste of time for you. Now, I have a daughter. My oldest daughter is really into art. So I'll go and spend $100 on painting supplies for her to take an online art course. So for me, we use Mark Kistler's live classes, and I pay for that. And that's invaluable to me. But if you have a child that hates art or that isn't really interested, that wouldn't be a good resource for you. So for me, I would really say figure out what your child is passionate about, what really interests them in the learning sphere. You don't want to just go waste money, but put your money there. Find a resource within that avenue and spend it there. So we spend our money on art. My youngest is a black belt in Taekwondo, so a ton of our money goes to Taekwondo, but it's really important to her, and so we do that. And travel. We spend a lot of money on traveling, and I think that is one of the best paid resources that you can possibly do to show. That's what we promised our girls. We would show them as much of the world as we possibly could, and then the rest will be up to them. But we want them to want to travel and to learn outside of the home. We're actually about to take a 3.5-week vacation. The girls and I will be doing most of it. My husband will take some of it with us. And 90% of the trip is history. We're going to be learning about history.
Wow.
So
well,
that's what
we
I would
look
do.
forward to learning as you guys learn.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so many homeschoolers try to do homeschooling for free. And there is a way to do it frugally, and there are places where you can do things for free. But I also feel that, especially as your kids get into middle school, because you have to start thinking about what do they like, because once they hit high school, you have to come up with electives for them. And then you have to start thinking, well, when they go to college, what do they want to do? Or when, if they don't want to go to college, what do they want to do? And now is the time to really, you have that time to build that up for them. And so spend your money there, and it's okay. And if you're making ends meet here, then that can free up some money to do something here. But don't just go and, well, I'm just going to spend it on math just to spend it on math. And so I spend more money now than I've ever spent on homeschooling, but I spend it in very different ways than I ever did previously.
Okay. Now think back to the beginning when you were getting started with homeschooling, and if you could go back to that time, what would you do differently?
Oh, I think I would take things even easier, especially with younger kids. I wouldn't have been, I was so concerned with curriculum once we had moved, kind of getting the right things. Are they learning enough? Um, and I would still, even up until, third and fourth grade, just not be so hardcore about homeschooling, but I was so afraid what people were going to say, and so afraid of, again, them being stopped and asked questions and being grilled. And I would also, have you ever seen Kathy Duffy's book, The 101 Top Picks for Homeschoolers?
I have.
I love that book, and I would have worked through that book sooner to know how my kids learn and how I teach, so that I could connect us even sooner to curriculum that would have worked for us, and I would have saved some trial and error.
Okay, and I'll be sure to link up in case other people haven't checked out that resource, and even for us to look
Okay.
into. I've heard of it, but haven't really done much with it.
Well, on our
And
site, I know Susan did a review of it, because we just think, even though our site, we do have some things for brand new homeschoolers, just what's a co-op, how to homeschool in Florida, because we're in Florida,
mhm.
um, just to have a couple of things on there, because we didn't want to have, if people did find us, we wanted to have some resources, and that is one that we talk about. It's just a great resource because she goes through all these questions that you answer, and it provides all these curriculum that, well, if your kids are like this, don't put them in this curriculum, even if all
Mhm.
your friends are using it, because they'll hate it.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess going along with this, what would be your best advice for a new homeschooling mom?
Similar, relax, 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 relax. It goes by in the blink of an eye, but we have a lot of time with our kids, and they're going to learn it eventually, and you're going to have bad days, and those are the days to pack it up and go on a trip. You don't have to finish every worksheet. You don't even have to do worksheets. Um, you can do school your way, no matter what everybody else says. And travel. Get outside of the house. Don't try to recreate school at home, because that's not what it is. It's homeschooling, which means it's your homeschool. It's your families, and do what's right for you. And maybe you are a family. I mean, I know some kids that love worksheets. They'll sit and do worksheets for hours. And then you have others that would rather cut their leg off than do another worksheet. Well,
Mhm.
don't make them do it, but if they love it, find a way to build that into your curriculum. I just think so many families are afraid to personalize their school, and they just go to what they learned in the public school and they just bring that home. Well, I could save a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of heartache and send my children to school. I'd have different heartache and different problems, but I if I'm just going to recreate it, I might as well just send them, as far as I'm concerned. So just relax and you'll find your groove. It takes a little while, and that's okay. It took me probably four years. And now we've used pretty much the same things. This for set curriculum, we use like I said, we use science or math and language arts. We use set curriculum. Everything else, we every year we do something different.
Okay, great advice. For the next two questions, what has been your greatest reward for homeschooling, and then what has been your greatest challenge?
My greatest reward, one of them has to be the time I get to be with my children. I get to see those aha moments. I get to see those light bulbs go off when they connect something. And that that's a great joy. And they're really close. My kids are 2.5 years apart, and it's funny because they're at, they're at camp this week. It's the 1 week out of the year we let them go to camp, and it's an animal kingdom at Disney, and so they come back. So they've learned all this stuff. So my daughter came home yesterday telling me all about this armadillo, all about armadillos. So they're still learning, but they were there, and this counselor was asking them about their siblings and asking, how many of you have hit or have been hit by your sibling? And every child but mine raised their hand. And that just frightened me. And I think because they're taught in school that siblings are a pain a lot of times, and they don't spend the time together. Whereas we have this really tight bond, and I see my girls as they're really good friends, and that's a great gift for me. And the challenge is the sacrifices, the time. I mean, I have put aside everything that I wanted to do because this is more important to me. So my dreams have changed, and that's okay, but it's a sacrifice. I'm the one that's home. I'm the one that comes up with the lesson plans. I'm the one that takes the time, and you have to be okay with that, and sometimes that's hard. And the self-doubt, because like I said, after all these years, I still have it. I think I always will.
Well, let's end on a light note. Share with us a unique talent or characteristic that you have that maybe we don't know about you.
Okay. One of the interesting things about me is when I go to a place, I see it as a scavenger hunt. I think in scavenger hunts, which is just really weird. But for the Disney schooling group, like I mentioned, I would do all of our scavenger hunts when we would have big group things. I would put together scavenger hunts, and I'm actually working for some. We're about to develop a membership site for our website, and so we're developing all these printables and downloads that people will be able to access through there. And one of them is going to be a scavenger hunt for all the 4 Disney parks, so that families can go when they come down if they want to use something like that, because we'll be out at Disney using one of the ones that I've created, and people stop us all the time. What are you doing? Where did you get that? How do I get one? So
Wow,
kind of creating that, and that's just the way my mind thinks. Oh, that would be great. That'd be a great clue, and oh, put that in that, and oh, they could go find that.
that's definitely unique.
It's weird, I know, but it's fun.
Okay, well, share with us, I guess, the best ways for people to get in touch with you or find you online.
For myself, well, our website is educationpossible.com, and we're on all the social media sites. Personally, Susan and I split the duties. So for me, I do our Pinterest. So if you work with us through Pinterest, you're going to work with me. And then I have my own Google Plus page, and I do a lot more on Google Plus than, say, Facebook. Susan does our Facebook page, and then we both do Twitter here and there, and every once in a while we'll post to Instagram. It's just hard to keep up with everything. I find that sometimes I'm doing more social media than actually homeschooling, and that's not right because I write about homeschooling, so I have to actually homeschool at some point. So I try to do that. And if you actually go on our site, we have one of the things we created was, again, we love history, and so we created this 13 colonies download. Again, I was personally working through the 13 colonies with my kids. We're now on the Revolutionary War, and I'm in the process of creating one for the Revolutionary War. But it's this great download that you can use with your kids, and it's a resource. It's kind of like a notebooking program, but a little bit more in depth. And it gives you, one thing I love about with my kids, now that they're older, we do a lot more discussions. So it gives you questions to really get the kids thinking. They have to start this critical thinking and putting these connections. And so you get all the 13 colonies, and you do all your research and put it in. It's this beautiful packet. And that's right on our site. We have a downloads tab, and it's free products, and it's right there that people can download. And that's one of my favorite things that we've done.
Okay, so we'll link up to that in the show
Yeah.
notes. And Megan, thank you so much for being my guest today. I just really appreciated you shared a lot of good nuggets and advice for myself and also for the guests. So thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.